Rizal studies at the University of Santo Tomas.
Mother's opposition to higher education. After graduating with the highest honors from Ateneo, Rizal had to go to the University of Santo Tomas for higher studies. The Bachelor of Arts course during Spanish times was equivalent only to the high school and junior college courses today. Both Don Francisco Mercado and Pasiano wanted to pursue higher learning in the university, but Doña Teodora, who knew what happened to Gomborza.
No, don't send him in Manila again. He knows enough. If he gets to know more, the Spaniards will cut off his head.
Hijo, I know you can do it. I have trust in you. The course that I want you to pursue is philosophy, and letters major in philosophy.
Years later, he wrote his journal. Did my mother perhaps have a foreboding of what would happen to me? Does mother's heart really have a second sight? One dark night in Calamba during the summer vacation in 1878, he was walking in the street. He dimly perceived the figure of a man while passing him, not knowing the person due to darkness. He did not salute nor say a courteous good evening.
You have no respect! Okay.
When he recovered, Rizal reported the incident to General Primo de Rivera and the Spanish Governor-General of the Philippines at that time, but nothing came out of his complaint because he was an Indio and the abusive lieutenant was a
This is
Spaniard.
so unfair. I am the victim but I could not obtain justice. My wound lasts for 2 weeks. This is discrimination when you don't have power.
The jury, which was composed by Spaniards, awarded Rizal the grand prize. Rizal's decision to leave for Spain had the blessings of his
Okay,
brother
brother,
Pasiano
but what
and his
about our
uncle
parents?
Antonio
I
Rivera.
don't have to seek our parents because they will not approve my plan. So, okay, Pepe, you have a blessing.
May 1, 1882, Rizal began writing farewell letters to his friends and family. Ano gave him money for his allowance. Saturnina gave him a diamond ring. February 1882, Rizal left for the Philippines for the first time to Spain, boarded on the SS Salvadora, bound for using a passport of Jose Mercado. May 9, 1882, SS Salvadora docked in Singapore and stayed in Hotel de la Cruz Paz for 2 days. June 12, 1882, at 10 o'clock in the evening, the boat anchored at Marseilles. He slept on board. June 16, 1882, At 12 noon, Rizal arrived at Barcelona and boarded in the Fonda de España. Rizal's first impression of Barcelona, the greatest city of Catalonia and Spain's second largest city, was unfavorable. He wrote an essay entitled Amor Patreo, or Love of Country. September 2, 1882, Rizal moved heading to Madrid in order to continue his medical studies. November 3, 1882, Rizal enrolled at the Universidad Central de Madrid in two courses, medicine and philosophy and letters. He practiced fencing and shooting at the Hall of Arms and Sons E. Carbonell. Rizal went to Paris and Germany in order to specialize in ophthalmology. He particularly chose this branch of medicine because he wanted to cure his mother's eye ailment. On his way to Paris, he stopped at Barcelona to visit his friend Maximo Viola, a medical student and a member of rich family. On his letter, he wrote that, with respect to the study of ailments of the eyes, I am doing well. I know now how to perform all the operations. I only need to know what is going on inside the eye, which requires much practice. He lived in poverty because no money arrived from Calamba and he was flat broke. The diamond ring which his sister Saturnina gave him was in a pawn shop. Upon seeing his talented friend's predicament, Viola, being loaded with ample funds, gladly agreed to finance the printing cost of the knowledge. He also loaned Rizal some cash money for living expenses. Rizal and Viola, two brown-skinned doctors on a roaming spree, left Berlin by train. On June 19, 1887, Rizal treated Viola to a blowout. It was his 26th birthday. According to a Filipino custom, he celebrated his birthday with a sumptuous meal. Rizal decided to return home after his sojourn to European countries because of the publication of Noli Me Tangere and the uproars it caused to the friars. Rizal was warned not to return home by Pasiano, Silvestre Ubaldo, and Jose M. Cecilio and other friends. Hounded by powerful enemies, Rizal was forced to leave his country for a second time in February 1888. He was 27 years old and a practicing physician. One of the happiest interludes in the life of Rizal was his sojourn in the land of the cherry blossoms for 1 month and a half, February 28 and April 13, 1888. He was enchanted by the natural beauty of Japan, the charming manners of the Japanese people, and the picturesque shrines. Moreover, he fell in love with a Japanese girl whose loveliness infused joy and romance in his sorrowing heart. Her real name was Siko Osoy. Rizal affectionately called her Osisan. Rizal first saw America on April 28, 1888. His arrival in this great country was marred by racial prejudice, for he saw the discriminatory treatment of the Chinese and the Negroes by the white Americans. After visiting in the United States, Rizal lived in London from May 8, 1888 to March 1889. Paris in the spring of 1889 was bursting with anxiety and excitement because of the Universal Exposition. January 28, 1890, Rizal left Paris for Brussels, capital of Belgium. Two reasons impelled Rizal to leave Paris, namely, first, the cost of living in Paris was very high because of the Universal Exposition, and the second is the gay social life of the city hampered his literary works, especially the writing of his second novel, El Filibusterismo. Early in August 1890, Rizal arrived in Madrid. He tried all legal means to seek justice for his family and the Calamba tenants, but to no avail. To seek solace for his disappointments in Madrid, Rizal took a vacation in the resort city of Biarritz on the fabulous French Riviera. Days flew swiftly for Rizal in Brussels like flying arrows. Day in, day out, he was busy revising and polishing the manuscript of El Filibusterismo so that it could be ready for the press. After the publication of El Filibusterismo, Rizal left Europe for Hong Kong, where he lived from November 1891 to June 1892. Rizal's bold return to Manila in June 1892 was his second homecoming, his first homecoming from abroad being in August 1887. It marked his re-entry into the hazardous campaign for reforms. He firmly believed that the fight for Filipino liberties had assumed a new phase. It must be fought in the Philippines, not in Spain. The steamer Cebu, which brought Rizal to Dapitan, carried a letter from Father Pablo Pastels, superior of the Jesuit Society in the Philippines. The lottery ticket number 9736, jointly owned by Captain Carnicero, Dr. Rizal, and Francisco Equilior, Spanish resident of Dipolo, a neighboring town of Dapitan, won the second prize of 20,000 in the government-owned Manila Lottery. The sleepy town of Dapitan burst in hectic excitement. The mail boat Botuan was approaching the town with colored pennants flying in the sea breezes. This spy with the assumed name of Pablo Mercado and posing as a relative secretly visited Rizal at his house on the night of November 3, 1893. He introduced himself as a friend and relative, showing a photo of Rizal and a pair of buttons with the initials PM, or Pablo Mercado, as evidence of his kinship with the Rizal family. Sitges ordered the arrest of Pablo Mercado and instructed Anastasio Adritico to investigate him immediately. The truth came out during this investigation. The real name of Pablo Mercado was Florencio Namanan. He was a native of Cagayan de Misamis, single and about 30 years old. In August 1893, his mother and sister, Maria, arrived in Dapitan and lived with him for 1 year and a half. He operated on his mother's right eye. The operation was successful, but Doña Teodora, ignoring her son's instructions, removed the bandages from her eyes, thereby causing the wound to be infected. Rizal and Josephine fell in love with each other at first sight. In the early part of 1896, Rizal was extremely happy because Josephine was expecting a baby. Unfortunately, he played a prank on her, frightening her so that she prematurely gave birth to an 8-month baby boy, who lived only for 3 hours. What a dark and cheerless Christmas for Rizal, he who was accustomed to spend this merry season in the company of his beloved family or dear friends, found himself alone and depressed in a dreary prison cell. At 8 a.m., December 26, 1896, the court-martial of Rizal started in the military building called Cuartel de España. Seated behind a long table on an elevated dais were the 7 members of the military court, dressed in their respective army uniforms as follows: Lieutenant Cortal Jose Togores Arjuna, our President; Captain Ricardo Munoz Arias; Captain Manuel Rigara; Captain Santiago Izquierdo Osorio; Captain Braulio Rodriguez Nunez; Captain Manuel Diaz Escribano; and Captain Fermin Perez Rodriguez. Also present at the courtroom were Dr. Rizal, the accused; Lieutenant Tavel de Andrade, his defense counsel; Captain Rafael Dominguez, judge advocate; Lieutenant Enrique de Alcocer, prosecuting attorney; and the spectators. Among the spectators were Josephine Bracken, some newspapermen, and many Spaniards. Rizal sat on a bench between 2 soldiers. His arms were tied behind, elbow to elbow, like a common felon. He was dressed in a black woolen suit with a white vest and black tie. He was calm and dignified in appearance. The President, Lieutenant Col Togores Arjuna, considered the trial over and ordered the hall cleared. After a short deliberation, the military court unanimously voted for the sentence of death. On December 28, Polavieja approved the decision of the court-martial and ordered Rizal to be shot at 7 o'clock in the morning of December 30 at Bagumbayan Field. From 6 a.m. December 29 to 6 a.m. December 30, 1896, he was busy meeting visitors, including Jesuit priest Josephine Bracken and members of his family, a Spanish newspaperman, correspondent, Santiago Matix, some friends, and secretly finishing his farewell poem. At 7 a.m., an hour after the reading of the death sentence, Rizal was moved to the prison chapel, where he spent his last moments. His first visitors were Father Miguel Sadera Mata, rector of Ateneo Municipal, and Father Luis Visa, Jesuit teacher. At 7:15 a.m., Rector Sadera left. Rizal, in a jovial mood, reminded Father Visa of the statuette of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which he had carved with his penknife as an Ateneo student. At 8 a.m., Father Antonio Russell arrived to relieve Father Visa. Rizal invited him to join him at a breakfast, which he did. After breakfast, Lieutenant Luis Tavel de Andrade, Rizal's defense counsel, came, and Rizal thanked him for his gallant services. At 9 a.m., Father Federico Faura arrived. Rizal reminded him that he said that Rizal would someday lose his head for writing the Nole. Father Rizal remarked, "You are indeed a prophet." At 10 a.m., Fathers Jose Villaclara, Rizal's teacher at the Ateneo, and Vicente Balaguer, Jesuit missionary in Dapitan, who had befriended Rizal during the latter's exile, visited the hero. From 12 a.m. noon to 3:30 p.m., Rizal was left alone in his cell. He took his lunch, after which he was busy writing. It was probably during this time when he finished his farewell poem and hid it inside his alcohol cooking stove, not lamp as some biographers erroneously assert, which was given to him as a gift by Paz Pardo de Tavera, wife of Juan Luna, during his visit to Paris in 1890. At 3:30 p.m., Father Balaguer returned to Fort Santiago and discussed with Rizal about his retraction of anti-Catholic ideas in his writings and membership in Masonry. At 4 p.m., Rizal's mother arrived. Rizal knelt down before her and kissed her hands, begging her to forgive him. Both mother and son were crying as the guards separated them. Shortly afterwards, Trinidad entered the cell to fetch her mother. As they were leaving, Rizal gave to Trinidad the alcohol cooking stove, whispering to her in English, "There is something inside." Trinidad understood. At 6 p.m., Rizal received a new visitor, Don Salvino Lopez Tonion, the Dean of the Manila Cathedral, Fathers Balaguer, and March left, leaving Villa Clara with Rizal and Don Salvino. At 8 p.m., Rizal had his last supper. At 9:30 p.m., Rizal was visited by Don Gaspar Sistanio, the fiscal of the Royal Audiencia of Manila. As a gracious host, Rizal offered him the best chair in the cell. After a pleasant conversation, the fiscal left with a good impression of Rizal's intelligence and noble character. At 3 o'clock in the morning of December 30, 1896, Rizal heard Mass, confessed his sins, and took Holy Communion. At 5:30 a.m., he took his last breakfast on earth. After this, he wrote 2 letters, the first addressed to his family and the second to his older brother Pasiano. At 5:30 a.m., Josephine Bracken, accompanied by a sister of Rizal, Josefa, arrived. Josephine, with tears in her eyes, bade him farewell. Rizal embraced her for the last time, and before she left, Rizal gave her a last gift, a religious book, Imitation of Christ by Father Thomas A. Kempis, which he autographed. At 6 a.m., as the soldiers were getting ready for the death march to Bagumbayan, a few meters behind, Rizal walked calmly with his defense counsel, Lieutenant Luis Tabel de Andrade on one side and 2 Jesuit priests, Father March and Villa Clara on the other. More well-armed soldiers marched behind him. Rizal, knowing that his rendezvous with destiny was imminent, bade farewell to Fathers March and Villa Clara and to his gallant defender, Lieutenant Luis Tabel de Andrade. Although his arms were tied, he firmly clasped their hands in parting. One of the priests blessed him and offered him a crucifix to kiss. Rizal reverently bowed his head and kissed it. Then he requested the commander of the firing squad that he be shot facing the firing squad. His request was denied, for the captain and he had implicit orders to shoot him in the back. A Spanish military physician, Dr. Felipe Ruiz Castillo, asked his permission to feel his pulse, which request was graciously granted. Dr. Castillo was amazed to find it normal, showing that Rizal was not afraid to die. The death rattles of the drums filled the air. Above the drum beats, the sharp command fire was heard, and the guns of the firing squad barked. Rizal, with supreme effort, turned his bullet-riddled body to the right and fell on the ground dead, with face upward facing the morning sun. It was exactly 7:03 in the morning when he died in the bloom of manhood, age 35 years, 5 months, and 11 days.